Hi, and welcome to our final Art History with Jackie. These videos started as a way for us to keep engaging with our community during our first COVID lockdown, and have continued to allow us to share some of our favorite artists and learn about some new ones along the way. Let's refresh our memories and look back at some of the artists we learned about in this past year. We started by looking at Vincent van Gogh, learning about his life and what led him towards post Impressionism. We prompted our first viewers to show us their own version of a Van Gogh piece. We then entered the world of pop art, looking at Andy Warhol and his comment on commodity culture in the United States. Warhol took a satirical look at how pop culture was revered in the US in the 60s. We looked at British street artist Banksy, who also uses satire and irony in his work to make comments on various social and political issues. Banksy, like Warhol, has circumvented the art market and changed the meaning of high art. In fact, we looked at several artists who integrate social and political issues into their work. For example, Cara Walker uses her black silhouettes to create storylines of black history. She highlights historical wrongs and discriminatory stereotypes that black people continue to face in society today. Brian Youngin is another artist who uses his work to make a social commentary. He recycles and reuses Nike Air Jordans to create Pacific Northwest Coast inspired masks as a comment on the commodification of First Nations culture, in comparison to the commodification of basketball culture. Youngin uses his art to highlight our nation's history with the first inhabitants of Canada. We then moved back in time to David Hockney. Hockney epitomizes the sun drenched, pool filled afternoons of Southern California, where he lived for many years. We went even further back to study Renaissance art, in particular Michelangelo and Botticelli. We learned how these two artists used mythological and religious figures in their work, and how they focused on the musculature and anatomy of man to create their detailed images. Moving away from representational work, we studied artists that were part of the abstract expressionist movement, such as Barnett Newman, Mark Rothko, Jackson Pollock, and Helen Frankenthaler. These artists were characterized by their abstract forms and their focus on color and brushstrokes. The paint was their subject. We studied some powerful contemporary female artists like Tracy Emin and Cindy Sherman, who were known for breaking the boundaries of a male dominated art world and playing with ideas of self expression and the feminist identity. We looked at powerful Black artists who mix art historical subject matter with collage, patterns, and Black figures to subvert the predominantly white art historical canon. These artists were Michaeline Thomas and Kahind Wiley. We moved across genres, looking at surrealist artists such as Salvador Dali, who believed the purpose of art was to create images that made you question your very existence. What is considered art has changed over time, and artists like Damien Hirst and Christo contributed to this. They played with very different mediums and the idea of temporary art, or art with an expiry date. The Impressionists were known for plein air painting, their feathery brushstrokes, and their ability to capture different forms of light. No two artists can better capture this than Claude Monet and Georges Seurat. We made sure to highlight some very influential Canadian artists like Lauren Harris and Emily Carr, who shaped the artistic rendering of the Canadian landscape. We looked at some amazing female artists that broke several glass ceilings throughout their careers. These were Frida Kahlo and Louise Bourgeois. We studied artists who worked past their disabilities to create beautiful art, like Yayoi Kusama and Chuck Close. Kusama has a mental disability that causes her to see spots on every surface in her life, and Chuck Close lost mobility in his hands and was able to create these self-portraits regardless. We looked at all of these artists and more, and I hope that you continue to explore new art and artists. Thank you for joining me in this last year. See you soon.